Now, Dan Andrews has announced that Victoria will ease a raft of COVID-19 restrictions from midnight tonight for the fully vaccinated, with Andrews stating no more rules, no more caps for venues. Victorians will be allowed to travel freely around the state, interstate also, depending on each state's border restrictions, and even internationally. I'm out of here, I can tell you. I've already booked my flights. Meanwhile, in Western Australia, they are still plagued with harsh border restrictions with no clear end in sight. Adding insult to injury, Premier Mark McGowan has been slammed for displaying double standards again. He's going to allow cricket teams to spend just 5 days in quarantine so Perth's Ashes cricket test can go ahead as planned. I'm now joined by Curtin Law School senior lecturer, Dr. Rocco Loiacono. I'm going to mispronounce your name every time, Rocco. Pronounce it for me so I can get it right the next time.
Loiacono.
Okay, I'm going to work on that. Next time it will be perfect. But Rocco, Premier McGowan's been accused of double standards here. Not surprisingly, we've seen special rules previously for sporting stars and captains of industry. Is this fair to the average West Australian?
Oh, good evening, Rita. No, look, as you said, yes, this has been done before. I mean, we saw it when the AFL entourage came here, and at the same time, people were barred from entering Western Australia from New South Wales, even if they were West Australians, even on compassionate grounds. And the same thing has happened again in relation to Victoria, I believe. Now, I mean, at that time, a leading Perth cardiologist was so incensed by this that he was moved to go on local radio and call it out, calling it mental torture for this lack of compassion. And he said at the time, well, look, if you don't have compassion, that's what makes us as human beings. And this is the same thing we're seeing again with the cricketers. I mean, if we're following the science, I mean, they can quarantine for 5 days, but everyone else who comes in has to quarantine for 14. I mean, where's the consistency in that?
But there is no consistency, and we've just seen a very irrational, unfair, I would say, approach from the West Australian government. They seem to be still in the grips of this COVID zero fantasy that even New Zealand has abandoned, but WA seems to be doing its own thing. Are there any indications now with Victoria open, with New South Wales open, is there any indication that the McGowan government is going to soon at least ease border restrictions and try to rejoin the rest of the country?
Unfortunately, not. McGowan called out Greg Hunt the other day for indicating that possibly the borders could open earlier than under the transition plan, and Mr McGowan slapped it down pretty quickly, saying, I think words to the effect of, he's never met Greg Hunt, and the federal government should stop interfering. He'll decide when he opens the border, or words to that effect. And again, the pushback on Talkback Radio and in the West Australian in letters to the editor to this has been incredible. I mean, initially, obviously, keeping the border closed. Early on in the year, we saw that it won Mr McGowan a thumping majority and majorities in both houses. But some of that shine is starting to wear off. When people see the rest of the country opening up, and we're still stuck here. While he announced a couple of weekends ago that he's going to go on a reconnection tour with China and Japan and I believe South Korea, while people can't see their friends and relatives at Christmas time. I mean, again,
well,
the double standards.
It's crazy, but it seems to be accepted by so many West Australians. Yes, there's more waking up, there's a bit more resistance, his popularity may not be north of 90%, but it's still pretty damn high. It's still higher than every other premier, and West Australians seem to be oblivious to how the rest of the country, never mind the rest of the world, is looking at them. We're going to be able to fly, well, we're able to fly to London, to Paris, to LA, but we can't go to Rottnest Island. It's bloody mad. But finally, I've got to ask you about this change that the Premier McGowan has made using his parliamentary majority to overhaul the state's electoral laws, meaning that the whole state will serve as a single electorate with 37 members elected under a one vote, one value system. Some critics are saying it will diminish regional representation. Tell me what this means for WA.
Well, yes, I mean, here we have, again, a broken promise in the sense that before the election, Mr McGowan was asked specifically whether electoral reform was on the agenda, and he said, no, this is a smoke screen, and I'm paraphrasing here, no, this is a smoke screen by the Liberal National parties. And lo and behold, at the election, a Daylight Saving Party member gets elected based on 98 first preference votes. That's 98 first preference votes, but gets elected through preference harvesting. So 2 days after the parliament opens, the new state government announces that there'll be a review of electoral laws, and electoral reform will be on the agenda, and including one vote, one value. Now, obviously, if you want to reform preference harvesting, that's one thing, and that's been done obviously with the Senate and in other states. But to use it as a Trojan horse for this holy grail, shall we say, of the WA state ALP of one vote, one value, again, it's smacks of it's double standards, and it's counterintuitive, because you never see WA state ALP argue that, oh, look, we need to reduce WA's Senate representation less than 12 because New South Wales and Victoria have the same amount of senators, but they've got a larger population. Regional WA, for several reasons, needed this enhanced representation because it's so remote, so far-flung. Services, daily services that in the city we take for granted. I mean, in some country towns, the doctor only goes in 1 day a week. You have to travel.
And I wonder, Rocco, if those electorates or regional areas that are most impacted are the ones who are exactly least likely to vote Labor in normal circumstances. Rocco, thank you so much. Always good to get your insights from WA.
Thank you for having me, Rita. Good night.